Hello, everyone. It's Vince 12 signing in again, and welcome back to this weird series I kind of do off and on. This time, the intention of this series will be reading and critiquing Christmas related stories. It is a festive season. I got the spirit within me. I know everything's been kind of chaotic. Well, that's a very severe understatement given the current state of things. But we should never forget that this is a time where we're supposed to come together and pretend that we can tolerate each other, and for the sake of trying to, push aside our own neuroses. But the name of the story is Santa Claus, and once again, there is no credit to the author. There is a very specific. Let me just go back and check. There's a specific section, I think, dedicated to Christmas-related creepypasta, which is perfect for me. And this one is currently trending. I think it's mostly because of the, the current season. I could be wrong about that. Maybe it's trending also because it's a really good story, and I really hope for it. Like I adopt a pessimistic attitude, but I fully acknowledge that I can one day be surprised and read like a absolute gem on my channel. For most children, Christmas is a celebration worth looking forward to. For 13-year-old Evan, Rich Evans? For 13-year-old Evan, it was something to fear. Evan still remembered his seventh Christmas Eve, clearly, and an evening that he, like most children, have been looking forward to for a long time. The seventh one specifically? Is that when you become a man? Is this like some kind of like cultural thing? Not even the seventh Christmas, the seventh Eve of Christmas, the day before Christmas. I'm looking forward to it. So like the next day when it's actually Christmas, like other kids are like running up, like, oh boy, Santa came and I'm gonna go run to the tree and tear open my presents, and it's like, nah. All I care about was Christmas Eve. Miss me with this Christmas nonsense. The next morning, he would get up early and open all his presents, eager to see what surprises Santa had left him. Evan imagined the restless nights ahead and thought, if he listened hard, he might be able to hear Santa come down the chimney. But this Christmas Eve didn't go at all as planned. It wasn't long before Evan's excitement gave way to horror. Mum, spelled M-U-M. Is that a cultural thing to like? This time I'm not like trying to speak in jest. I've heard people pronounce it that way. I have never seen anyone like actually like write it out like that, unless they're trying to put to try to writes a certain speech pattern when it comes to a character, but this isn't like dialogue. It's just like the narration. Then again, maybe they're trying to go for kind of like almost like a storybook style, where it's like very colorful language and whatnot. But I don't know. That's my assumption, because there's not really much that indicates that from where we started. Mom had insisted that Santa wouldn't come if Evan stayed up late, and she had just began sending him off to bed when Evan was distracted by a loud and muffled thump on the roof. It seemed to be coming directly above the fireplace. It was just like in the night before Christmas. There arose a clatter, and Evan approached the chimney to see what was the matter. Was it now that Santa had decided to make an appearance? Ash was falling from the. I don't know. I'm like kind of take on this like overly dramatic, whatever. This overly dramatic type of narration I'm doing. Ash was falling from the nooks and crannies of the chimney to the bottom of the fireplace, sending out charcoal and smoke and a burnt smell. Someone had to be disturbing the ash. Evan was alone. Who else went down the chimney at this time of Evan was alone. Who else went down the chimney at this time on Christmas Eve? The chimney rattled, and in a deep, rolling voice hit the air. Santa's famous "ho ho ho" echoed down the chimney, and Evan watched in delight. Things were silent for a moment. Evan's mother stood behind him, watching. Then arose the biggest clatter yet. There was an explosion of grayish smoke as mountains of ash fell to the bottom of the fireplace. The fireplace shook as if there was a sudden earthquake. Then, amidst the grayness, there was a flash of red and a tremendous thump. Had Santa made it? Evan rushed forward, unable to stop himself. He felt a flare of excitement, but Mom was the first. I love how Mom is capitalized, too. Like, I'm pronouncing it Mom because, correcting it in my head, but still. It's like, as if that's her name. That's not even her name, that's her official title. But Mom was the first to the chimney. Evan tried to remember the last time his mother had expressed excitement, but couldn't. When the smoke cleared and the fallen Santa came... Then the smoke cleared, and the fallen Santa came into view. He didn't quite have the belly that Evan had expected, but this was the least of his observations. The least. How that sentence... The least of his concerns, the least of his observations, like, that doesn't... I don't think that really makes sense grammatically, does it? Like, the least of his observations? Like, I am observing... Maybe it does. I'm observing this less than everything else. I don't know. It just sounds weird. Evan gasped as he saw Santa's beard had appeared to slide off during the fall, but there was no blood. The only blood came from Santa's head, and it was just a trickle. The bad thing was the trickle of blood was coming from what looked like a big dent in Santa's head. Evan frowned. Santa couldn't die. He was too good for that. I love that. Like death is like some, it's a frightening concept, but to him it's like some kind of thing that you need to be above dying now. Like you standing over a corpse, like, come on, I thought you were better than this. Santa, you fucking disappointment. I mean, to be fair, I would be disappointed if I was about to get my present and Santa's fat ass, not only did he die, but he fell on top of my PS5, the fucker. Or, I don't know what time that this takes place in, maybe my Nintendo Entertainment System. He couldn't die, not now. So somebody had played a trick on him? Evan glanced at the beard that had appeared to slide down Santa's face. Beards didn't move like that. At least not without there being blood. So then if it wasn't a real beard, it had to be a fake one. But if that was a fake beard, then Santa's suit was also a fake suit. This wasn't the real Santa. This was Santa in disguise. So wait, it is Santa. It was Santa in disguise. So Santa's 4D chess move was to, I don't want people to know it's me, so I'm going to shave my beard but put on a fake beard, so when I go down a chimney and if it falls off, people will think, oh god, Santa. Oh, it's just some dude that obviously not Santa because the beard's fake. Little do they know that's actually Santa without the beard. I don't know why he would think it's a good idea. And also, it must not have worked that well because this kid could easily just go like, hey, that's Santa in disguise. If a 7-year-old's like pointing it out, then I think there's something severely wrong. I think that's a litmus test for any spy foundation. Is like, okay, well, walk in front of that 7-year-old, and if he can tell that you don't belong there, then we're gonna have to take this back to the drawing board. Evan glanced once more at the fake Santa's exposed features, trying to figure out who this person could be, and made sense of the face that seemed so familiar and made sense. What? And try to figure out who this person could be, and made sense of the face that seemed so familiar with it. I don't think that's the right tense there, but he realized for the first time that Mum had never been excited. Instead, she had rushed to the fake Santa's body in grief. Sobs racked her body, tears dripping onto the fake Santa suit. Evan stood dumbfounded and choked out one word. Dad? The story keeps going, but I would like to point out that if this had kind of capped off at that one specific moment, I think that would have been enough to really pass things off. Not necessarily as a horror story. I guess it could qualify as a horror story. It's a kind of it's punchy, it's brief. It actually kind of hits like it hits home the point. It hits home the very blunt kind of stinger. To be, I think the term is. Like I remember there was a kind of relatively brief creepypasta called Lightning about a child who has a fear of lightning that's by his window, and I don't want to give away the ending. It's a very specific twist, but I think if this story had capped off at the moment where he says "Dad," it would be kind of like that. Not quite as strong, but it would have been effective. I'm not complaining. I'm just pointing it out. Like if the author decided to trim it at that point and submit it, I think it would have been serviceable. And it is obviously like an attention grabber. It's a very good way to get the attention. So I kudos for that. Like I'm invested. I'm curious to see what would happen. What will happen next. Evan woke up in a cold sweat, bolting upright into a sitting position. He glanced at his watch and read the time. Who goes to sleep wearing their watch? It's kind of weird. That's in the nitpick. I don't know. I'm very anal about certain things. 2:19 a.m. Before the light on his watch switched off, he read the date. December 20. Only 5 more days until Christmas. Once upon a time, Evan would be happy about this, but now he wished that Christmas never came. It was the same dream again, accurate in every detail. That evening was exactly how it had been in the dream. It never ceased to amaze Evan how vivid these dreams were. They got right down to the core and forced Evan to relive the worst moment of his life. Those goddamn nightmares. Those damn dirty trolls. They got worse around Christmas. He would dream of that fateful evening his father slipped and fell down the chimney, smashing his skull on the way down. Or he would dream of those claws, those razor-sharp strips of polished bone, and weapons that would slice through him like butter if they gave so much as a flick. Most kids grew out of their belief in Santa, came to accept that Santa was just another myth made up to make children happy, but Evan hadn't grown out of it. He had been jolted out of it, his belief shattered with the tragic death of his father. Evan's father had only been trying to surprise Evan, but he had done much more than that. He had bent Evan beyond repair, and every Christmas Santa Claus would haunt Evan. Oh, by the way, I want to point. Yeah, it's probably in the title. Santa Claus is in sharp appendages at the end of your hands. I love that's a common thing, but it's like people like. Did you ever notice that if Santa has exact same letters as Satan, kind of makes you think like everyone's made that joke, everyone's made that observation. It's funny, but people always like expect you to be like, "Oh, I never thought about that." Evan was convinced that Santa Claus was some kind of demon in humanoid form. He was definitely not human. He was a supernatural entity of sorts, but Evan had always thought of him as a demon. Well, a prowler that regularly breaks into your house to, like, put shit underneath. Like, well, not even. Yeah, well, then again, you're kind of a weirdo for taking a tree and bringing it into your house, like killing trees and like displaying their desiccated remains in your living room. I think that's kind of weird too. So, tit for tat. I can't really talk shit about Santa when your practices aren't that much, more wholesome. Get fake synthetic trees like us normal folk. God. Excuse me. Where was I? Santa Claus had been in Evan's life ever since his father died. Though he was mostly absent during the year, he would come back around November, maybe October. When it came near to Christmas, well, he would be more persistent then. There were the nightmares, for one thing, and the visions. And Evan had no shortage of seizures around Christmas time when Santa Claus was at his work. So is Santa Claus Slenderman now? Like, he's getting Santa sickness? He's gonna, like, have his, marble reindeer, maybe? Or concrete reindeer? I know there's concrete giraffes. He's gonna talk about, like, how he needs to take eggnog in order to keep himself from having seizures. Sometimes Evan had panic attacks that seemed to come out of nowhere, and there was no doubt who caused them. Evan was no stranger to bullying at school because of seizures and a strong dislike for Chris. Who, I know that bullies don't abide by like some moral code, like they just do what they want to do, but I have never in my entire life heard of a kid that was bullied for having seizures. I know kids, again, like I'm sure it's not out of the realm of possibility, but I think even like Stephen King as bullies would like kind of be weirded out at the thought of like, hey, let's go fuck with epileptic Evan. Like, we're gonna flash a flashlight in front of his face and watch like the foam come out of his mind and the eyes roll back of his head. Like the same guys that like will pull a knife at you for looking at him funny. Like, dude, that's not cool. That's not fucking cool. That's not even funny. And that's something, all right. Santa Claus had taken its toll on Evan. Well, no, the seizures and the bullying, I think, took its toll on Evan. Like getting the shit kicked out of him. What are you supposed to do? I'm not trying to make fun of people with epilepsy or having seizures, but just imagine like seizing up as someone shoves you in a locker and you can't cry for help because you're like basically trying not to swallow your tongue. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Evan knew that Santa Claus had in some way been triggered by his father's death. Your father dying was incredibly offensive to me. So, I think it's only fair that I seek restitution by coming around and mentally scarring you every Christmas. So, Christmas, early, late November, early October, one of those things, No, wait, I got that one backwards. You know what I mean. Sometimes Evan believed that Santa Claus was actually his father's ghost and turned evil in the existence of the afterlife. So, this father... So he thinks that his father, who had gone to the effort of dressing up as Santa Claus and climbing up to the roof and shimmying himself down a chimney just to please his son and make him happy for Christmas. Like, he's the kind of guy who's like, you know what? Fuck you, son. I'm haunting you. This is what you get for not... I guess you're like mad for like, son, why didn't you catch me when I was like plummeting down to the fireplace and I hit my head on the poker and died? Wow. Evan wasn't one to believe in the supernatural. You believe in Santa Claus stalking you. But Santa Claus had changed his mind about a lot of things. Oh, excuse me. After a while, I have an upset stomach right now. After a while, Evan had been forced to accept that Santa Claus was always going to come back. Even if Evan grew out of his own personal dislike for Christmas, he would never have a joyful Christmas again. It was Christmas that had caused his father's death. No, your father was an idiot. Like, I've heard of people like dads dressing up as Santa to go and they usually come to the front door though. Like, they don't. Chimneys aren't meant to be traversed. I think that kind of goes without saying. I thought that was like basic common sense. That's why people are so stunned when like an animal manages to get in, because that was not something that was meant for them to be able to do that in. So Christmas didn't. Don't blame Christmas for your dad's like lack of caution. It was Christmas that caused sue. Yeah, you're gonna sue Suzuki. Like, your car killed my dad. I was like, your dad was driving 100 on a 40 mile per hour highway. Like, I think it was one of those things that was bound to happen regardless of what car he was in. It was Christmas that caused Santa Claus to come. Evan's head flopped back on his pillow. School had finished weeks before, but Evan was still dreading the next day and every day to come until Christmas. What Evan was looking forward to was the absence of Santa Claus. Santa Claus would hang around a bit after Christmas, then he'd slowly fade away. and Evan would be free of his presents between February and November. Then he could forget about Christmas, pretend it never existed. But no matter what, Santa Claus would always come back, and Evan, well, he was sure he would never be free of this demonic essence again. We've been over this. You're kind of repeating yourself now. Evan woke early and rolled out of bed, opening his laptop without bothering to draw the curtains or turn on the light. He wanted to go online, check his Facebook, play some games, Facebook games. Evan, I hope Santa kills you. Get some, download some ROMs, you fucking plebeian. Do anything to take his mind off of Christmas and, more importantly, Santa Claus. You're doing a lot to hype up Santa, but we have no real, like, he doesn't really have presence in the story. Like, this feels like, it feels like we kind of skipped a large portion of setup to him being paranoid like this. Like, right when his dad dies, like, you think that there would be a little bit more lead up, like the kid's having nightmares and they become aggressively more realistic, you know? And then he realizes that it's an actual thing that's haunting him. It was an hour or two before Evan sat down to a lazy breakfast of cornflakes, which by the time Evan's mother had gotten out of bed, Evan's mother had gotten out of bed. Stop calling her mom. Mom had hit. Why is it you call it like Evan's dad is just called Evan's dad, but his mom is called mom, like not Evan's mom? I just noticed that. Mom had shut herself out from society a while after she unexpectedly became a widow, developing a strong case of depression. Eventually, she had to come to terms with her husband's death and became a much more loving mother to Evan. But she still had her bad days. Sometimes Evan wondered whether Santa Claus was in her mind too. They both supported each other a lot, but Evan couldn't help but feel that the house was lonely every once in a while. Evan had told his mom about Santa Claus for a few years of his father's death, but then he decided to pretend he had outgrown it. He didn't want to put extra weight on his mom's shoulders, and the last thing he wanted to do was make it seem like he was a child. But Evan couldn't hide the seizures. He couldn't hide the fact that he was sometimes absorbed in a hallucination, often concerning Santa Claus. Evan's mom seemed to blame it on trauma he had received after his father's death. Sure, maybe not all kids would experience that type of trauma, but everyone's different, aren't they? Evan had a said good morning to Mom and continued to eat his corn flakes. The fireplace was directly to his right, and Evan thought that he caught a glip of red out of the corner of his eye. He turned his head. Nothing. Paranoia. Or maybe Santa Claus was playing tricks. Like, I made a joke earlier with, like, the Chris Chan voice. Oh, those dang dirty trolls. Like, it's like, I'm just imagining that this is what Chris Chan thinks when he's, like, in his house on Christmas. All those dang dirty trolls. Oh, those dang dirty trolls gonna come and interrupt my Christmas. Fuck it. This is my new headcanon. This kid is Chris Chan. Or maybe Santa Claus was playing tricks on him. Either way, Evan didn't fancy seeing Santa Claus in the flesh. He had seen him already, 5 times to be exact, and would see him the 6th time for every Christmas Eve at 8:13 p.m. The exact time his father had fallen. He appeared in the fireplace, and Evan was always there to watch him make an appearance. Why? You don't have to. It was then that Evan decided that this year he was going to be prepared. It would be no different than any other year. Santa Claus would appear at the fireplace at exactly the same time as he did the year before, and the year before that, and the year before that year, and the year before that year. Mom was never around. She always went to bed early on Christmas Eve, or stayed in bed the entire day. This time, Evan wouldn't just be watching Santa Claus. He destroys Santa Claus once and for all. This is Professor Membrane's edgy, first draft backstory of why he hates Santa. Like, we thought it was because he got socks for Christmas instead of plutonium or whatever, but it was really because Santa had murdered his dad. Why do you think we never see Dib's granddad in Invader Zim? Now we know. Why hadn't he thought of it before? That day, Evan confided himself to the safety. Well, no wonder Dib's dad is disappointment in his kid. He grew up to be Christian. That day, Evan confided himself to the safety of his home, or more specifically, his bedroom. He distracted himself with computer games and other activities, while all the time planning how he was going to get rid of Santa Claus when he made his appearance. Like, I get like Santa Claus is making him have seizures and shit, but there's not like what is he doing? Like he just shows up and then he just stands there like awkwardly, like what did he just do? T-pose to assert his dominance, and then once it hits 12 o'clock and Christmas is officially over, he just like slowly fades back into the ether. Or is it like the Krampus where he's like goes to the roaring fireplace and it gets sucked back up? Before his father died, he had a hunting rifle that hung on a hook in the wall. I like that film, by the way. The Krampus is pretty good. Not perfect, but I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. After his death, it had been hidden away inside his wardrobe, which was, of course, in the bedroom Mum had left him. A gun that was Evan's closest shot, and it was the only thing he could think of that might kill Santa Claus. What else was he supposed? Like, to be fair, this is someone who keeps like regularly, year after year, intruding into your household. So I think that putting a bullet in his chest is like justifiable from a legal standpoint, at least. Like, maybe you object to that morally, but I sure as fuck don't. But what? Like, what is he doing? Like again, like you stand there at the fireplace waiting for him to come, and then he comes, and you have not said he did anything, or because if it was something where he comes from one specific area every year and you're always like trying to hide in your room when you know he's coming, and he comes into your room and like tears shit up looking for you, or like maybe you'll be out during Christmas like at a friend's house and he still somehow manages to come over there and look for you and when no one happens to be around at the moment or some shit like that, right? Like, that would be one thing, but you go there to greet him. That indicates that, to me at least, that there's no immediate danger. It doesn't help that you haven't really described what it does when it's there. That day, what was it? Where was I? A gun was Evan's closest shot he could then kill Santa Claus. What else was he supposed to do? Shout out a few defiant words and attack Santa Claus with his bare hand? You just imagine, like, you're Santa Claus, you're a nice fella. You're a good fella. You love kids. You wanna make sure that every kid is happy in the world. But I can't do it every year. So you know what? Every year I'm gonna plan to give these kids what they want, depending on how they behave. This kid's been good. He's good to his mom. I know he gets bullied. I'm gonna come down and down the chimney. I'm gonna give him a nice gift to show him that, look, life is hard, but you would always have things to look forward to. Like I want to show you that everything you go through is not how life needs to be. I'm gonna give you a little spark. I'll give you that little spark of hope that can kindle into a roaring flame one day. So he goes down the chimney. He's got like a Nintendo 64 or Nintendo GameCube for this kid. I don't know. I guess that's when this come out. Go down the chimney. He sees a little boy like sitting at the fireplace. Like, oh, he was waiting for me. Like, oh, this kid does have some hope. Like he is waiting for Santa. And he looks down. He sees the fucking Winchester rifle in his kid's hands, and it like. His smile slightly, dissipates a little bit. It's like, oh, son, you shouldn't be playing with BB guns. Like, oh, I know that might be what you like, but those are dangerous. You can put someone's eye out. And the kid looks at him, takes careful aim, and then blows out Santa's intestines with a fucking buckshot. Well, just right. You know what I mean? Like, he shoots Santa in the fucking stomach or in the face. This one kid with his fucking hallucinations ruins Christmas forever for everyone. That this is the original script for the Tim Allen Santa Claus movie. Although that would make it a little more that wouldn't make it any more darker than it already is. This dude fucking murders Santa, and then he becomes Santa for some contractual bullshit. So if Charles Manson wants Santa's powers, like coincidentally, like one of his followers murders Santa, they're like, hey, I'm gaining weight and growing a beard. I'm turning into a were Santa. I was like, oh, okay, we can get into people's homes and kill them easier. A gun was okay. His dead father's old hunting rifle was the only gun possible for Evan to obtain. The only problem was getting it out of the wardrobe without his mother catching him, and she was sure getting. Oh, sorry. She was sure to get suspicious. She saw him taking a gun out of the wardrobe. This proved to be an easier task than Evan thought, however, when Mom went out to do some more shopping. Evan went straight to the wardrobe doors and started burrowing through the clothes. It was then that he experienced a seizure. Evan had just caught sight of the gun when a sudden jolt ran through his body. His muscles were paralyzed, his joints frozen in place. I want to point out right now, I do like that. I don't like the fact that a kid is depicted as having a seizure. I appreciate that they had brought it up, and there was actually it was actually set up, like some stories would actually bring it up as like a side, like maybe something like Tiki Toby or one of those kind of stories where some kind of ailment that the protagonist suffers is brought up and mentioned, but the author doesn't really do much with it because that's not where their interest lies. And it kind of raises the question of, well, why do you bring this aspect to the character and introduce it in the story if you're not going to do anything with it? So I give like a little bit of credit right here where credit's due. I appreciate that it was set up and explained, and instead of just like being dropped on her lap or whatever, Evan had just caught sight of the gun when a sudden jolt ran through his body. His muscles were paralyzed, his joints frozen in place. Evan was unable to do anything but stare helplessly as he fell backwards onto the wooden floor. Electricity ran through his body, which was now twitching madly on the floor. Shadows danced in front of his eyes. The shadows danced in front of his eyes as the visions began. He saw his father, now ash-covered skeleton, wearing a Santa hat, leering down at him through empty sockets. He saw a Christmas tree decorated in bloody limbs and organs that looked like unraveled intestines. He saw the claws curling in front of his eyes, claws that would come in two if he did so much as blink. Evan came to just as he heard the car pulling into the driveway. Frantically, his eyes darted around, searching for the hunting rifle. Like that one segment, I actually think that the image of his dad, well, the ash-covered skeleton, I think, how does he know his dad's skeleton? Maybe like the image of his dad like staring at him, wearing a Santa hat, like as he's seizing up, is unnerving in and of itself. I don't think you need to go to the extreme of like the bloody limbs and organ. I'm not a prude. Like I'm not averse to, viscera being depicted in any form of media. But it's I don't know. It's some level of restraint it's more beneficial, especially in this set of circumstances. Evan came to a friend and turned around, searching for the hunting rifle. Something thin and black poking out of the pile of clothes caught his eye. The rifle! He snatched it and bolted to his room, not remembering to close the wardrobe door. He had just reached his bedroom when his mom opened the door. Why? I don't know. Like, I can't imagine that she would just leave it there. Like I don't know. Like, when I think about people who store, like, who don't like want to bother using the gun safe or whatever, like they usually have it like either like above their bed, like in some kind of like doohickey that's a step so they can like immediately access it, or maybe it's to the side of their bed, or beneath their pillow, or underneath the bed, like not buried underneath the wardrobe, unless she didn't know about it and for some reason Evan did. Until his mother had called. He had just reached his bedroom when his mom opened the door. It wasn't until his mother called out to him an hour or so later. Evan, have you been going through my wardrobe? Evan remembered that he had neglected to close the wardrobe door. Yeah. Evan replied, thinking, I was looking for a jacket, since all my other clothes are too small. It's pretty cold, with all the snow and all. Evan was proud of his voice didn't so much as quiver. Because of this, his mom didn't pursue the subject any longer. In that one day, Evan experienced a seizure inside the wardrobe, frequent flashes of movement out of the corner of his eye, and a brief hallucination. Usually it was worse this time around, but Evan had it lucky. The nightmares didn't improve that night. The next day, Evan realized that there are no bullets in the rifle. He had forgotten to find some in his pants to get out of the wardrobe when he saw his mother. Oh, excuse me. Give me a Tylenol. Not Tylenol, some Pepto-Bismol or something. Evan had forgotten to find some in his panic to get out of the room before he saw his mother. Before his mother saw, excuse me. Mom didn't go out that day. Evan decided to look through the wardrobe anyway, and if she asks, he'd make up some lie as yesterday. He'd make up the same lie as yesterday, excuse me. After some serious rummaging, he found 3 stray bullets hidden in the corner of the wardrobe in a plastic casing. This time, he didn't forget to close the wardrobe door and put the bullets in his pockets in case his mother should enter the hallway, but she didn't. The plan was looking successful. The next day, Santa Claus talked to Evan. What? Okay. Santa Claus talked to Evan. The words were spoken inside Evan's head, but he knew well who they belonged to. Evan found that he couldn't remember the speech afterwards, but he knew that had something to do with Evan's plan to kill Santa Claus. Of course, Santa Claus could get inside Evan's pardon me. Evan's head, so why shouldn't he be able to read Evan's thoughts? This is what had to be done. Well, if he can read your brain, then why would you still go through the plan? When you just assume, like, well, he knows what I'm going to do now, fuck. Like, he's going to appear, like, he's going to expect him to sit at the fucking, the bottom of the fireplace. He's going to be expecting Santa Claus. He's going to get a tap on the shoulder. Is like, nothing personnel, kid, and get cleaved in half. Still, Santa wasn't prepared to give up so... Still, Evan wasn't prepared to give up so easily. That day, he might have seen a lot of things that weren't there, but Evan kept his thoughts on that loaded rifle. On the 22nd of September, Evan not only heard Santa Claus and experienced his visions, but he also felt Santa Claus on his own flesh. At one point, it felt like a cat was running his claws across him, but there was no one there. Still, it didn't stop the blood from flowing. When Mom asked him what happened to his arm, he said that Stormo had scratched him. Evan had an old tabby cat called Stormo. That was no stranger scratches. Well, that's something that you probably should have set up earlier. I gave you credit for setting up the seizures, and then you had to just dump that on us. It's not a big deal, but still, like you know about Chekhov's gun, but then you kind of ignore it for one other instance. It's a minor instance comparatively, but still. Evan didn't know the seizures and hallucinations simply because Evan had confined it to himself to his room all day, and it was a pitiful existence. But Evan knew that he had to do it to avoid suspicion. Mom blamed it on what happened with his father, relating it to the past trauma, and, as a consequence, feeling the need to shut himself away from the experience that had been related to Christmas. Evan didn't have any problem with this. 23rd passed quickly, but the 24th day was the worst day he had experienced so far. He spent much of his time being tormented by the demonic presence of Santa Claus. I'm sorry, like, I get... It's just... Some things, when you read them out loud, just... They don't really... They don't really strike a terrifying image, is what I'm saying. It doesn't help, like, Santa Claus is described as having big claws, but I don't think much else has been really articulated about his presence. So I'm just envisioning Santa Claus with, like, giant cat hands, but it just looks like regular Santa. And he's, like, standing over Evan with those rosy red cheeks and a genuinely friendly smile, and he's, like, still torturing this kid psychologically and making him seize up and, like, laughing about it. Like, that's what I'm envisioning. It's weird and it's surreal, but it's too over the top to be scary to me. It's like I don't know. It's like, imagine if this, you can do it with anything. No, I was about to say, like, the Easter Bunny, like, oh, I'm being terrorized by the Easter Bunny. Like, it doesn't work. Maybe the Tooth Fairy, because I don't know. The Tooth Fairy does have like some kind of I guess horrific connotation potentially. I guess because you get like if a boxer named himself the Tooth Fairy, like you get like, oh, he knocks people's fucking teeth out. I'm pretty sure there was a serial killer actually named that, or maybe I'm thinking about like some kind of movie. And there's that classic Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson film, The Tooth Fairy. As time dragged, Mom walked in the room. Once Mom walked into the room while he's having a seizure in bed. What? The frightening his frightening messages ringing in his ears. Once Mom walked into the room while he was having a seizure on his bed, but he was able to avoid suspicion by saying that he was in the middle of a nightmare. I think I understand. I grasp where this is going. I'm assuming that this is just something in his head because of the trauma that he endured, and that he's gonna end up like committing some kind of tragic event. But that's a guess, and I almost hope that it doesn't go there, because the setup is kind of heavy-handed. So I think it's like almost obvious. I could be wrong though. But then I have said before, like sometimes the most logical progression is the one you should take, and you shouldn't try to subvert expectations. But then you have the beginning of the story where that had that setup and a genuinely interesting little twist, with it finding out that his dad died. So I'm kind of expecting this to go a similar route. Time dragged on, and Evan became more and more tormented. Evan's mother went to bed early, as she normally did on Christmas Eve. This left Evan 2 more hours until Santa Claus made an appearance. Every past year, Evan had been at the fireplace at 8:13 p.m., but it was because Santa Claus had willed him to be there. He felt his legs move there, and he had been unable to stop them. Santa Claus wanted Evan to be there to see him in the flesh. This is why Evan made sure that he had the rifle clutched tightly in his hands before the time came. Evan glanced at his watch nervously. No, he was way past nervous. He was terrified. 8:13 came, and nothing happened. But at the 20-second mark, he felt his legs moving down the hallway towards the lounge. His hands opened the lounge door. He approached the fireplace. The curtains were drawn. The lights were out. It was dark, and Evan could see nothing save for the silhouette of Santa Claus in the fireplace. How big is your fucking fireplace? You can see the silhouette. The silhouettes come in all shapes and sizes. It could be a silhouette of him crouching. Never mind. Evan could see the outline of the Santa hat on its head, and being no stranger to the claws that hung on the shadow's sides. Evan felt the presence of Santa Claus and knew that Santa Claus. This is so redundant. Knew that Santa Claus would soon be illuminated by a ghostly light, and Evan would be able to see him in the flesh. He then would raise his gun, pull the trigger, and it would be over. Or so he hoped. Evan stood there for what seemed like forever. Then the empty, bleeding eye sockets came to view. White, almost transparent skin, the sharp, bloody set of teeth that showed behind slimy lips, and tattered Santa suit smeared in blood of innocent victims. And worst of all, the long, sharp, knife-sharp set of claws that hung aside, and was terrified. He stood paralyzed in fear as Santa Claus, just call him Santa, as Santa grinned and raised his hands toward him. Evan was unable to move, unable to do anything but watch as the claws came closer and closer, touching him. It was too late to shoot now. It was all over. But as Evan stood, muscles stiffened, the finger tightened around the trigger, and there was a terrific bang and a flashing of light. Then the world faded to black. Evan woke to Mom shaking him frantically. He blinked, trying to figure out what had happened. Then he remembered. He had killed Santa Claus. Mom said he heard the bang and came to see what the noise was. And then when she saw Evan was holding their hunting rifle, her first thought was that Evan had shot himself. But she had seen that there was no noticeable bullet wound, and Evan was clearly still breathing. Evan was exhausted, but too happy to comment. His face broke into a smile. I did it, he whispered. His mom looked concerned. You're not well, Evan. You're going to the doctor as soon as possible. I worry about you. I killed Santa Claus, Evan babbled, oblivious to his mother's concern. He was overcome with joy that Santa Claus would no longer be in his life. I'm not just worried about you, Evan. I'm also quite angry with you. Evan said, his eyebrows digging into a scowl. Somehow you vandalized the fireplace. It looks like something out of a horror movie. Evan frowned. I never vandalized the fireplace. Mom sighed. Then how would you explain that? Evan's head twisted around to. Evan twisted his head around to face the fireplace. Solid crimson letters had been written on the brick wall behind the fireplace. The paint looked fresh, and Evan could see it still trickling down the wall. It was not paint. Evan realized it was blood. Evan realized, but blood. Ho, 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 I'm coming for you. Well, that was kind of surprising. I was expecting it to be like some kind of like psychological twist, where it's like like all this was in Evan's head because of the trauma he went through, and he was really kind of like the stress of what happened to his dad was fucking with his head. As one comment says right here, I think Tiololo is called. They basically said it was cliche, and the ending was very cliche. And his mom, like, I don't think she would be like. Why would his mom assume that he did that shit? Like, maybe it's because she assumes that his trauma resulted from the incident on Christmas had caused him like act out in a bizarre new way, and like it kind of did. Now I think about it, kind of in some respect did build up to that, because she had noticed that he had become increasingly more reclusive during that specific point in time. But still, like, I think it should have been expanded upon. All in all, I would say that this story is actually pretty decent. It's nothing groundbreaking. There's a fair amount that I like about it. I do find something, like, I do have a number of complaints, and a fair amount of them are kind of just minor nitpicks. The mom constantly being called mom, I don't understand the point of that. Again, if this is something that's common to another part of the world, I really like to know. I'm not sure how it really gels, or if it is just a stylistic thing that the author did to make a story a little bit more interesting. The constant repetition of the name Santa Claus. Like, I get that you like think the name, the name sounds, the play on words is fun and all, but after a while, just call him Santa for short or something like that. Honestly, and I hate constantly putting out this criticism, this specific suggestion, because I've suggested it so many times that I feel like I'm becoming redundant by saying it. It's almost like a default thing, but yeah, I would say expand upon this, like add more to it. And I would actually I know that the beginning portion of the story leading up to when Santa Claus's big reveal, it didn't mention anything about Santa. It mentioned about how many times he comes around, and that could potentially be effective, but I think it kind of falls flat because all we know about him is that he makes Evan seize up. And again, I just assumed that it was chalked up to the trauma, and that's what led me to believe that this is like a more of a psychological horror rather than just like an outward like slasher type monster thing. I honestly feel that certain segments certain segments should be expanded upon, and I think the plot could use a little bit of restructuring. Like, okay, you have the part where his dad dies, and honestly, like, I don't really think there's enough of a connection between that incident and the presence of Santa Claus as an entity. I think it doesn't help that we get like a description of what followed after that incident. It might have benefited the story to have another few paragraphs explaining the events, shortly after his father had unfortunately passed. Like maybe a month later, or like the next year, his mother's trying to cheer him up around that time, because it's about the time where your dad passed away around here at this time. So I want to get your mind off it. I want to show you that you can still have a good Christmas. And that's when he starts to notice that something's wrong. He starts seizing up. and starts seeing things, starts seeing the presence of this weird creature. And theoretically, like I said, like us not getting a description of him, and it could work for the reveal at the end, but there needs to be more in regards to the effect. We need to know exactly what this guy does aside from this one thing that, again, I felt was like an attempt at a misdirection, but I was wrong about that. Like, you should have said at the beginning that he will wake up with scratch marks. He will maybe like have segments where he talks about the scratch marks on his shoulder, and specifically the things that Santa Claus would say about him. Because we have that one moment where he's like talking about, describing like, yeah, Santa Claus talked to him, and he was talking about his plan and how it wouldn't work or whatever. And it's like, we don't get that dialogue, or even a small recollection of what was said. And because of that, it doesn't feel like Santa's actually had a presence in the story. And you can have an antagonist that has an like a looming threat, like it's an overhanging presence over the protagonist's shoulder. We see it in like all forms of media, where we understand that this is a thing that could at any moment come crashing down on us. But again, it feels like there's not enough real build up, or not effective build up to it. One thing I will do, because I want to give some praise where praise is due. I do like the kind of sense of, it does have a sense of rising tension, because you really feel Evan like kind of building himself up and amping himself up for the night to come. And you can sense that he really is getting more and more determined to act out his plan. And that aspect of the story is actually pretty good. Evan himself as a character that we follow is not interesting, but he's grounded enough to where we actually can root for him to actually come out safely. And it's one of the, again, I want to bring this up again, it's one of the few times that I see in these creepypasta stories where the ailment is depicted with like seriousness, and it's shown with the severity that it really deserves, and that helps garner sympathy from the audience. Unlike Tiki Toby, which is basically just he can't feel pain, which is actually, if anyone really wants to look into it, a horrible ailment to have, because you have no real context when your body essentially needs to rest or is in dire need of a medical treatment because you can't feel it. Like, you could be like bleeding internally and not notice it, and that's a horrible thing. Pain is a necessity to essentially start your brain and tell you like you need to go, or you need to patch yourself up. You're in trouble. Give the brain context. But in Tiki Toby, it was used as a plot device as to how Toby can just shrug off blows from his dad and feel nothing. It's just like, it's basically treated as a superpower. Here, this kid having seizures, it's depicted, like I said, tragically. Like, this kid is so adversely affected from his dad's death that this is an aspect of that he's suffering from. And it does, and if I complain about the pacing and the lack of presence that Santa Claus has, it does give me, at least as someone who actually sympathizes with this kid a little bit, as the character, it does give us some incentives to want us to see him see this through, because in the back of our mind we're thinking that if he could actually kill Santa Claus, maybe this ailment that's like constantly plaguing him whenever Santa Claus comes around will finally be lifted, and he can have a normal Christmas or whatever. But that's my 2 cents on the story. Like I said, if I don't go by actual number ratings. All in all, a decent story. It fell short in some areas, but I think it's a relatively creative, fun little thing. It did keep me engaged. I will say that. I won't lie about that. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. How long has this been? How long have I been recording? For almost an hour. God damn. I hope you all have a wonderful, safe Christmas Eve. I know things are stressful for a lot of people around the world. Everything feels like dreary, and this has been a very trying year, but you always have something to look forward to. No matter who you are, no matter what circumstances you're going through, even if you don't know it, you always have something to look forward to. And that you have my word on that. And I hope you all stay safe and just try your best to stay happy. Have a good one. Merry Christmas.